Hi there, knitters, and Happy New Year! Welcome to episode 39 of Knit Talk with a Tech Editor. I'm Megan of the Unapologetic Knitter, and I'm a tech editor. If this is your first time seeing one of my videos, thank you so much for joining us. It's wonderful to have you here. And if you are one of those folks who are coming back after my little break during December and have watched videos with me in the past, thank you so much for coming back. It's wonderful to have you here. For those of you who are curious about what I did over the December break that I took, I'll talk about it at the end of the video, but I want to just jump right into today's topic and help those who are curious about it. So today we're going to talk a little bit about something that I experienced while editing a book in the last minute in December. Today we're going to be talking about dry blocking. Now, I should say dry blocking is not something that is new to me, but I knew it as a different name. So the designer that I worked with on this last book and I had some pretty entertaining back and forths using different words to describe the same process. But before we dive into that, let's just step back and take a look at wet blocking. So wet blocking is very simply the process of submerging your project into water with wool wash or without, to allow water to fully saturate the fibers. Once those fibers are fully saturated, you remove the project from the water, squeeze it out, and then lay your project down on your blocking surface and pin it out. And as I said those words, I realized I should be very careful. Not every project is pinned out, but I think we will save that detail for another video. The gist of wet blocking is simply that you fully submerge your project, get it wet, pull it out of the water, squeeze as much water as you can out, lay it down, and then let it dry. So the whole purpose, or I guess I should say the order, is you get it wet, lay it down, and let it dry. Dry blocking, on the other hand, goes by two names. One is dry blocking, which was the first time I heard that over the holidays. But the name that I know it as is spray blocking. And so the name dry blocking to me is a bit of a misnomer because you do in fact get your project wet, but it's done in not a really different order, just the reverse order of what we do for wet blocking. So unlike wet blocking, where the first thing we do is throw our project into some water and let it soak, with dry blocking, the first thing we do is lay it out on the surface that we want to block it on. I've just got a very simple swatch that I have attached to a blocking board with blocking combs to give you an example of this. But generally, obviously, this would be laid flat on the surface and it may or may not be pinned out. So the first step is simply to put your dry project with all of the ends woven in onto your blocking surface and either just lay it out as it is or pin it out as I've done for this example. The next thing you're going to do is grab a spray bottle. And I just want to take a second and talk about this spray bottle. I'm not getting any commissions for telling you about this one. It's just one that I really love. But it works really well if you're interested in doing spray blocking because it has a long spray. I'm going to try not to soak myself here, but I don't know if you can even see that, but it goes for a really long time, unlike a regular spray bottle that you're constantly psh, psh, psh. That's very technical, but it's got a nice long spray. So once you've got your spray bottle, what you're going to do is spray the surface of your project with your water. Now, what you may notice is you're going to get beading on the surface of your project. I'm not sure if that will focus or not. But because wool is a naturally water-resistant product, you're going to find that the water just sits on the surface and looks kind of glistening. So what I find really helps is to just gently lay your hand on the surface of your project to get those water droplets to soak into your project first. And you're simply going to repeat that process of spraying your entire surface of your project, tapping it in if you need to, until the surface is completely wet. Now, I want to caution you and say you're not going to be getting it as wet as you would if you were wet blocking. If you think about wet blocking, you submerge your project, you pull it out of the water, and it's very often dripping. You don't want it to be that wet. You want it to be consistently wet without dripping, like if you lifted it up. You don't want water coming off. I think a really good example, since we've just all been through the holidays, is when you've dried your dishes after a really long or a really large round of dishes and your towel is really damp. You can feel that it's wet all the way through. And if you squeezed it really hard, water would probably come out, but it's not dripping as you just hold the towel. That's the kind of saturation you're looking for when you are wetting your dry blocked or spray blocked project. Now, once you've sprayed it and you've got everything to a saturation that you like, that's it. You just now let it sit and dry, just like when you're doing wet blocking, except because it's not as wet, it probably won't take as long to dry. So now that we've talked a little bit about both methods, both of which end up with your project wet on drying mats, waiting to dry so you can wear it, the question to me, or the question that I think of most is, why would you choose one method over the other? And I have pretty specific criteria about what is going to get wet blocked versus what's going to get dry blocked in my world. But I definitely encourage you to go and see if other people are talking about this. I'll admit I didn't go take a look around, but just see if other people have different criteria for what they believe meets the needs of wet blocking versus dry blocking. So let's just jump in with what I think of as items that I would dry block. These are items that I actually probably normally wouldn't block, which sounds bad because of course I encourage everybody to block everything, but you know, I can make my own and break my own rules. So a lot of times I do not block hats. Mostly because I want them to remain snug, and unless I'm doing something with a lot of texture or a lot of color work, it doesn't generally need that much smoothing out. So if it's just one that I'm going to wear at home, I'm not publishing a pattern, I generally don't block it. Other things that fall into that category for me are simple stockinette mittens, and then accessories around the house like pillows or blankets that would be really, really heavy. I might not want to block or throw in a wet blocking bath. So in my mind, those are projects that don't require blocking. So I would generally just sort of weave in the ends and go. Another example would be this shawl that I'm wearing, which I'll talk to you about in a few minutes. But I didn't block it. I just let it set it and go. So the nice thing about dry blocking or spray blocking is that it allows you to maintain the general shape and size of your project, but also allows your fabric to smooth out, set itself into the stitches, and sort of give you that drape that you get from a finished project that has been blocked. For example, I did dry blocking way back in 2019 when I knit my tail feather shawl from Amy Vandelar. I knit I guess it's a wrap. It's rectangular. It's not triangular. So I knit it all, finished it, wove in my ends, laid it out on blocking mats and pinned it out, including all of the points that you see at each edge, and then sprayed it and got it wet just like I demonstrated on my swatch, and then just let it dry. When I unpinned it, there was no bounce back because I hadn't overstretched it, but it allowed the eyelets to open up and the fabric to smooth out without that unknown sort of growth factor that you can get when you make something really large like a wrap or a shawl. Now, when it comes to wet blocking, this is a really different beast. I think it's best used for projects that you will wear against your body that you might perspire, or projects that have a lot of lace work that really require, letting those fibers get really wet so that you can pull them open and really expand the lace work. When I talk about wearing something against your body where you might perspire, I think specifically about sweaters. If you wear them with a tank top or not, they're pretty close to your body one way or another, and socks. So wool is naturally odor resistant, naturally water, not proof, but water resistant. But over time, it will pick up body odors, it absorbs the moisture that we have on our body, and so from time to time these items do need to be refreshed. Socks need to be washed every time you wear them. That's my opinion. But for sweaters, I might wear a knit sweater 4, 5, 6 times before I feel like it really needs a good washing. So the process of washing your sweater has you submerge your garment, or I guess I should say sweater or socks, has you submerge their project in water, you add wool wash, and fully saturate the fibers to take out all of those odors and oils that we don't want to have in the project anymore. You then remove it from the water, squeeze out that water, and lay it flat to dry, which basically is the blocking process, the wet blocking process specifically, not the dry blocking process. So if you have an item that you are going to wash in the future, wet block it. Because if you have gone to the trouble of dry blocking a sweater that you've maybe tried on through the process and you're like, oh my God, it fits perfectly, I'm not going to block it because I don't want to change it, but then you wash it, it's completely going to change the garment. So it's better to know and ahead of time what your garment is going to do when it's fully submerged. Which kind of brings me to the moral of dry blocking versus wet blocking. When you are swatching for a project, make sure you treat your swatch the same way you're going to treat your finished project. So if you're going to knit a scarf, just like that tail feather wrap that I showed you just a few minutes ago, and you're going to dry block the scarf, and you probably will never wash it, dry block your swatch. Pull it out the way that you're going to pull out the scarf to see how those eyelets are going to open up, see how those points are going to fare. If you're going to knit a sweater, which you're definitely going to have to wash in the future, wet block your swatch. You don't want any surprises by dry blocking your swatch, only to learn that when you wet block your sweater, you're going to get a completely different size project. So for those of you who don't want to stick around to hear me jabber on about what I did over the holidays, just to let you know, next week we are going to have a conversation about a write-in request I had from a knitter about the entire process of planning for a project. And I'm going to be referring to this specifically relating to garments. We're going to be looking at how to best swatch for a project, both flat and in the round, the blocking process, and then measuring the swatch. I think it's a really good process that we don't often see the entirety of in other locations, so I thought it would be great to walk through every single little step to make sure you're ready to start knitting sweaters for the year. You'll probably get to see a little bit more of my house, certainly my kitchen, because that's my big sink where I soak things. Now, if you are curious about what I did during that month that I took off in December when I wasn't making videos, and beyond editing a book at the last minute, I thought I'd just share a little bit because I'm a human, why not? So for the first time, and I think this is the thing I'm most excited about, for the first time ever, I treated myself to a yarn advent calendar, yarn advent kit. Each day I got to open a box correlating to the day of the week with a new yarn color in it and decide what I was going to do with it. And this shawl that I'm wearing right now is the result of it. It was really fun and fast because it was only 20 grams every day, so it was very easy to add in the next day. And I just love the way that the colors all blended together. So if you have an Advent set that you're not sure what to do with, this is the Fadvent, get it? Fading Advent shawl that's available on Ravelry now. It can be used for any weight of yarn that you would like, and if you've just even got like leftover project yarn that you're not sure what to do with, this is a great project. I'm going to link it in the description below. It's perfect TV knitting, and it nets a really large, cozy shawl that, gosh, if I stand up, you can see it goes all the way. I can't even back up far enough because my microphone goes all the way down past my pant line, so it's nice and cozy. Now, after working on the shawl and finishing up, I spent some time working on the socks for this year's sock masterclass. So I have decided to make this sock masterclass a choose your own adventure class. So we are going to be focusing on top-down socks, but we're going to have the option of 2 different heel methods and several different stitch patterns that you can work into your socks based on your gauge. The socks can be worked at whatever gauge you like. Of course, I recommend fingering weight because that's what I like, but if you want to try sport weight or something even heavier, it'll still work for that. So I hope you'll join me. I'm going to have more details coming up, obviously, but I hope you'll have some fun and plan to join me with that. It'll start in March, and I would like to give a shout out to our official yarn sponsor, UU Yarns. You've heard me talk about Heather several times in previous videos. She's my knitting bestie, and we love to support each other. And when I told her I was going to do a sock masterclass, she jumped right on board, providing me with yarn to knit several sock samples, as well as videos that I'm going to be able to record to show you every single step to make sure you're successful with your socks. So yay, Heather! So despite my desire to spend a lot of my holidays spinning and binge watching the TV show From, which if you haven't watched and you like kind of horror thrillers, definitely give it a check. I didn't get to spin much. I believe it was in early December I finished filling up a couple of bobbins of Jacob's wool that I had spun on my little wheel, but I didn't get to ply it up. We kept ourselves busy with other things. We actually finished 3 puzzles over the Christmas holidays, which is quite a feat. I think that might be our record. We sometimes get 2. But then the other thing that took up a lot of my time, other than Baldur's Gate 3, which if you're a gamer, holy cow, it's so good, was watercolor. When I took a trip back to California in November with a couple of my girlfriends, I was gifted a little watercolor set, a couple of paintbrushes, and a book, like a watercolor book. And I have just found so much joy in releasing that creativity and seeing what they can do. You know, so much of my time is spent, focusing on the structure of knitting and, the rules of knitting. It's really fun to just be able to let it all go. If you had an especially fun holiday season, or maybe a not so fun holiday season, or if you're excited for 2024, feel free to drop me a little note in the comments below to let me know what you're excited about, what your plans are, knitting-wise or other, because I'd love to hear from you. Now, if you are still with me all the way to the end here, thank you so much for coming and joining me today. I'm really excited about some of our upcoming videos for this year, especially next week when we're going to be talking about swatching and blocking and planning for a successful project. If you enjoyed today's video, remember to hit that like button. And if you're here and you're not already a subscriber to the channel, remember to hit that subscribe button so you get a notification of a video that comes every week. And of course, if there is something that you would like to learn that I haven't already covered in any of my videos, please feel free to leave a comment below the video or submit a form through my website, which is also linked below, and I'd love to get you in the queue for this year, hopefully. Thank you so much for joining me this week, my friends. Have a wonderful rest of your week, and happy knitting.